Hey everybody, it's Ken Pooch Van Druten here. I've got Chris Rabold with me. How are you, Chris?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Just hanging in there, you know, just trying to navigate through the quarantine. It never stops here, man. It just keeps going.
Yeah, it's crazy how busy we can all be in the midst of this.
I know. It's wild, isn't it? I mean, it's good. It's keeping me totally, you know, in the mode of doing stuff and keeping my brain off the fact that we're all locked in houses, you know. But I feel like in some instances I'm like more busy than I was before this.
I think it's because it's also unfamiliar and it's sort of fabricated, forced busyness.
Totally.
It feels foreign and it's an odd feeling for sure.
Yeah. So everybody, you should notice when you see that we're using Zoom right now rather than the other thing that we used. And that's probably because there's some sort of weird internet outage that's happening with our other service. So anyway, that's why it looks different. But hey, it's still the same thing. It's you and I talking. So it's all good. By the way, we just want to say thanks to all of you out there. You know, 2,100 subscribers in 3.5 weeks is just amazing, and we appreciate you. And we'll keep trying to put out good content, keep you guys occupied, and not waste your time. So anyway, we just want to say thanks, and we appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
So this week, Chris, I thought that we might talk a little bit about the situation when you have either passed off your file or your gig to another engineer or filled in for another engineer, and kind of how that went. And I thought that maybe we could first maybe talk a little bit about the time that we've done that with each other. So kind of maybe give us a little, you know, lead up to it. Like how did this all happen and who it was? And yeah, tell us about it a little bit.
Sure. And this is a little bit of an origin story too for Pooch and Rabold.
That's true.
So several years ago, I think it was the beginning of, or sometime into 2016. So I had done promo with Justin Bieber, and I had carried all through rehearsals, and I'm getting a little foggy as to when this came about, but all I know is I did rehearsals, did promo. It was about 6 months worth of work. And then I think we were into the tour, and
I think you were like 3 shows in.
Yeah, something like that. And it became apparent that, as happens in this industry, I mean, as we know, you know, life doesn't wait for us to finish tour.
That's right.
And life was calling and had been calling for a while. And, you know, sometimes we can get carried away in this profession, and we can get swept up in the one gig to the next, to the next, to the next. And and I was very much a part of that, which is kind of sort of the double-edged sword of your own success at times in this. So anyway, I needed to split. And I don't even know if we've ever talked about this. I thought of you first in my mind because I knew you were out there. I knew that the gig needed a heavy hitter. And I also knew that you would be accepted by the production manager.
That's the real deal. Yeah.
No, that's just part of it. But
no. But I mean, you know, that is like the total thing that people need to realize is when you're filling in for people, often it's not the front of house engineer that's making the final decision about who ends up in that spot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, I mean, and to be honest with you, I don't want to say terrified, but you never want to leave a gig, right?
Right.
And things were going really, really, really well. And so I needed to figure out the most graceful way to do this and to put everybody in the best position to succeed moving forward. So somehow in this, Toby Francis plays a role too. And I don't remember. He
does, doesn't he? I don't know.
I think he may have connected us.
Okay.
I think I called Toby. I remember standing outside of an award show in Vegas and discussing this with him. And so that's that's sort of the gist of it. Is I needed to leave a gig that was going very well.
Yeah.
But I had to put the right person in place. And that right person, not only that would be the stellar mixer that would just rock it, but that was politically going to be accepted.
Yeah, because I mean, the real deal with this stuff is like, even when you leave a gig because of life things that you have to leave, you don't want that to go poorly. You want to be the guy that is the hero and says, you know, hey, I have to leave, and I know that's a big deal. I know everything's going well, and I know that we're having a vibe here that's really good, but I have to leave. But I am not going to leave you stranded. I'm going to put in somebody that is going to, you know, do this job well. And that's a hard thing, right? Like finding the right guy to replace yourself is a difficult situation. So then what happened?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, so then I got your number. Maybe that's where Toby plays a role. So I got your number. And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember just giving you a call. And I know that for a fact, I remember saying, look, this is everything that this gig is.
Right.
And this is also everything this gig is. Like, yes. I wanted to be 1,000% honest about the things that were great about it, and then the things that were challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you recall that, but I remember thinking that was the right thing to do, because it did, like most gigs, it presented certain challenges. Let's just say that. So,
no, of course, I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. Is up front tell the person, you know, what they're getting into, and you did for sure.
Of course. So So anyway, so that was it. So I called. We spoke, and then I don't remember how much lead time, like when the handoff was going to be, but at least in our minds, if it was accepted. So from there, I went to, and we had a good conversation, and you were interested, and all was well on that end. So then I had to go to the PM,
right,
and tell him what was going on. And I remember being in San Diego, and I was sweating it. You know, I was not looking forward to the conversation, and he was unbelievably gracious and cool. And especially because I brought you up, that definitely did what I wanted it to do. It helped make it more acceptable, more palatable for him.
Well, I mean, the thing about this that we should tell people is that, you know, that particular production manager had history with me. Like, I'd done 3 bands with that guy for, you know, a long period of time. I hadn't worked with him in years, actually, like 10 years. But early on, not early in my career, but the mid part of my career, I worked with like 3 bands in a row with him: Limp Bizkit and Korn, and, you know, some other shit. So, yeah, I think it was a really smart move on your part, to have all of that information before you go and talk to a production manager. You know what I mean?
And I think this, now that we're sitting here, we're starting to flow a little bit, and I'm starting to kind of remember things. This also speaks, you know, we did a video on the business side of things recently, that maybe, and I'm sure we'll do one at some point in time on just general politics, but I had heard the production manager speak of you in favorably many, many, many times. So that was just one of those things that, you know, I was like, you know, you hear it or you observe it, and then you just kind of file it away, you know? So this is a prime example of just kind of always keep your eyes and ears open. You know, you never know when it's going to pay off. Because again, I had zero idea this was ever going to come to pass. So he, carrying on with the story, he was into the idea. He said, we can do this. We can make this work. So we arranged for, I'm assuming I sent you a show file. I don't know if I did.
I think you sent me that, which, by the way, this kind of all went down, and I can't remember exactly, but wasn't I flying there the next morning or something? When
I'm sure in true music business fashion, particularly live music, it probably happened really quick. I think you sent me a file. I think you sent me a file, but I was flying there anyway. You know what I mean? It was like I was on the plane, like listening to it. But yeah. So the plan was, and what we did was, Pooch came on board, and the idea was we would hang, we would talk, and I download every bit of information I had in my brain that he could use. And we hung for a few days. You were going to essentially kind of shadow me, right? Just watch, just observe, because there was no massive hurry for me to get out of there.
Totally. Before we go there, though, let's point this out. That's really important, I think, is that the very first day that I got there, you literally got a set list and you made important notes relating to each single song. And it was, by the time you were done writing on it, it was like not even a white page anymore. It was like, little details of this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. So that even before I heard a thing, before we even like went out into the arena or whatever, I had an idea of what things were like the important things to get. I think that's really important that we tell people that, because when you're passing your gig on to somebody, you have to be gracious like that, right? Like, if you want it to go well, if you're leaving a gig not because you got fired, you're leaving a gig because you have something else that you have to get to, a life thing, you want it to go well. And that's one of the tools that you need to have, is that the communication with the guy that's coming in has to be like super detailed. And you were.
Mm-hmm. So, and that, I do remember that. And I started thinking about that when I was talking, and that, each gig, and exactly, you think of a set list, there's only so much room to scribble on there with a fine point Sharpie. Right. If I was handing some big guitar band to you, back to our 3 guitar things, it would have been primarily what solos were where or whatever. And this thing was all like vocal based stuff. Totally. It was a big pop gig. Yeah. So I gave that information to you. And then honestly, we just hung out for several days. I remember there was like 2 days off. I remember being in Salt Lake at some point. We just talked and talked and talked, and I just tried to give you everything that I could. I want to say you watched a couple shows.
I did.
You watched a couple, and then and this is all so fast. I mean, this is the way it works. Yeah. Sometimes you don't even have this. But if I'm not mistaken, you watched 2 or 3, and then you jumped in. Yeah. Isn't that right?
That's right. I sat and babysat your file basically, and just I didn't touch a thing really, and basically sat during a show and got all the cues right, like all of the cues that were important and all that kind of shit. And you stood next to me, and if I was blowing it and missing a cue, you were like, dude, he's going to walk out right here. You got to nail that, Right. And I can't remember how many shows of that did we do? A couple?
At the most 2.
Yeah.
At the most 2. And and the hard thing there, was like segues, transitions in songs. Without, we talked about time code and automation, my show not running on it, you had to fire that manually. Yeah. So it was that kind of stuff. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. And to be honest with you, that was it. And then I split, and then we stayed in touch. Obviously we spoke, and I'm sure I spoke to the production man. I'm sure I spoke to other people, and from that point forward, all I knew is that everything was going really well.
Cool. And let me step in here, because this is something that I would like to impart on you out there. Okay. The reason that the first month of that went really well is because I didn't really mess with anything. Truth be told, I may have, I don't know, like done little stupid things
I'm
here
sure
and there.
There's something instinctively you just had to do.
Like I just because this brings up a really good point. Let me take us on this path just a little bit, in that I've been thinking about telling people this, but I've been thinking about it in the sense that here we are in episode 11 or whatever. And, I think what people are really digging is that here are 2 guys that have completely different workflows. Like you and I, remember we've talked about all kinds of workflows that we do, and almost in every conversation, you do it very differently than I do. But we achieve the same result, or the same goal of making somebody sound good. So I think people are really attracted to the fact of our videos that we're doing, in that we're showing you that there isn't just one way to mix a huge artist. There's all these different paths to get down there. So when I took over for Chris, I took over and knew that everybody was totally stoked with what he had going on. So why would I even think about like showing up and start changing everything? That is like the dumbest move ever. And I've actually seen guys do this. They let their ego get in the way. They show up and they start this. No, I'm not even going to use his file. I'm going to, create my own thing. And I just go, why would you do that? If the dude was succeeding and everybody was happy with what he's got, why would you mess with it? I get it. If the guy's been fired, that's a whole other scenario. That's
and the other boneheaded thing would be to take a fired guy's file and use that.
Yes. That's exactly right. Yeah. If the dude's
that would be another questionable move.
Yeah. Don't do that either.
No.
But my point is that I've seen guys fail. I can name 5 of them right off the top of my head. Showing up to a giant gig that was already successful. Someone had to leave and their ego got in the way and they started messing with stuff. And, that's not going to go well. I think that artists, MDs and artists are expecting you to do that and are looking for you to fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like if they already like what's happening, they're going to be like, well, this new guy, he's going to show up and he's going to totally change it. And then it's going to suck. And so I was really super leery of that and very much like, okay, I'm going to keep everything feeling the same to the artist, feeling the same to the MD, feeling the same to the production manager. Everything feels the same. It's as if Chris were here. You know what I mean? And I did that honestly, probably, I don't know how many shows, but at least the first month and a half, 2 months.
And it's something to point out here, talking about the differences, the way everyone does everything. I think we found out that we had a lot of similar approaches as well, but different avenues
to get there. For sure.
To get there, which is, of course, you've kind of already said that. But part of the handoff here, such as that, again, my setup typically has plugins and outboard gear. And I knew Pooch was coming in that was primarily the in-the-box guy, So, but at the same time, I knew it's all the same shit. You know what I mean? So
for the most part. For the most part.
So it was no big deal for me to be like, hey man, look, I've got these things in the rack. Just, this is what you're going to be dealing with. But I knew kind of that at some point in time, part of the reason that we do this, that the move to the politically sound move, as you're saying, is to keep the status quo, if it was going well before. Once you've earned that trust and you're in a good place and everything's safe and the winds are still, then you can bring in some of your own thing. And we talked about that early on, that would probably end up happening, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just, from my perspective, you had your usual thing going on where, had a whole outboards thing of gear and my thing has always been plug-in stuff. So I knew eventually I was going to kind of head that direction and maybe eliminate this rack. But I definitely wasn't going to do it right off the bat. I was like, let's make this a slow change and then also make it, interject my take on it, eventually. But the point I want to make to everyone is that this didn't happen 3 shows later. This was a very gradual, it was a gradual thing. But I did eventually. So eventually I eliminated your rack and everything became in the box. It got, it got my signature on it, but it was still very much had a lot of your, the bass part of it was still you know what I mean? So that went along for shit, I don't know, a year or something, right? And then
it was a while.
And then I got a kidney stone in Japan.
Right.
Which is horrible, by the way. So yeah. And the next gig was in the UK. A couple things happened, which was interesting, is I was in Japan and so was Toby Francis.
That's right.
And so I had a kidney stone and I'm like, I was in major pain. This happened literally. I woke up in the hotel room at 4:00 in the morning, and I've had a bunch of kidney stones, so I know what they feel like. And I woke up and I just was like, shit.
Oh yeah.
I have a kidney stone, and I'm the guy that doesn't pass kidney stones. Like, I have to have surgery to have, kidney stones removed. I've had a bunch of them. And so I knew right away, I'm like, I'm not going to make it to the show. It's 4 a.m. and I'm not going to make it. And that was a weird day because Toby happened to have an off day from something else.
God, you lucked out.
Oh man. He came down to the show and I did sound check, and with him standing next to me, and I almost did the exact same thing that you did to me. I've took a set list and, wrote out every single thing. And during sound check, I was like turning to him and going, see, in this one thing, you need to watch out for this. And he's going to walk out on the thrust right here. So you need to pay attention. I was just like, oh man. So he had the like accelerated version of what we did.
And that was a gigantic show.
Oh man, dude, it was
all around.
Big. Just so many like moving parts, so much stuff. Moving parts. And, like mic changes, going from a headset to a regular microphone. And, there was a lot of stuff happening, thrust in front of the PA the entire time and, all those kind of things. So then Toby did that show, but luckily there was like a week of travel. So it was like Japan to the United Kingdom or something, and literally like flying around the world to get to a show in England. I think, I can't remember, did the production manager call you or was it me calling you? I can't remember. I think it was me. All right. So by the way, there may
have been a text involved here too, where I think I may have said to Toby, like, what? Like
what is happening?
Like, hey, if someone needs me, let me know. That might have played a role in it too.
Which, by the way, was a horrible couple of days for me because I had that kidney stone at 4 a.m. I went and did sound check, and then I went to a Japanese hospital, and they refused to do the kidney surgery. They wouldn't do it. So I had to get on a plane and fly from Japan to Dallas and drive from the Dallas airport straight to my kidney doctor, my urologist. Which
is a dangerous move too, to commit to being in the air that long.
So it was, I had a kidney stone for almost 2 days, and it was fucking horrible. Anyway, there's no other word for it, dude. It was absolutely horrible.
I get it.
So anyway, I do know that at some point I called you and I said, dude, are you available? Like, what are you doing right now? And you,
shockingly, I was.
I know you were in the middle. There was like a couple of weeks or something, right? In between like something 2 gigs like and so they quickly flew you to London.
Yep.
And so a year or a year and a half later, you show back up to a file that you started that I now have changed to be all in the box. And how was that for you?
Yep. And when you get to, I don't know about you, but any gig I do, like I could walk back into any number of gigs decades later and I'll still remember the songs. I'll still remember it. It might be in the moment that I go, oh, right. This is where you learn the stuff so deeply. So where I hadn't listened to any of it, mind you, in a year, but I knew it. Yes. And I knew it intimately.
Yes.
And so I got there and the deal was we were going to go straight to, it was a festival. But we were fortunate enough, obviously being the headliner, that we were going to have, we had like a load in. I really lucked out. We had a load in day.
Yes.
And a sound check.
Yep.
Now, and then the show was the next day.
Yeah, but I think that wasn't original. I think that the production manager fought for that in order to give you a chance. I think that's what happened. But
which would make sense. So I remember. So basically, the coolest thing for me, I popped it up, the show file, and I looked at it, and it really did look remarkably similar. I mean, I could just tell from looking at it that it was all. And that what was cool, and I can, it's funny. Yeah, you're the in the box guy. But where there were plugins that may have replaced hardware, and mind you, there was already plenty of plugins in place, but now there was more. There was just more racks. But everywhere where there was something, it was like literally like an SSL strip or a something. Like there wasn't 700 plugins.
Right.
So I could quickly assess and go, I see what he's doing everywhere. And sonically, so I still did my tuning thing with the PA, so I knew where we were starting. Of course I did playback before we started, and sonically, like you said, and like I've used this phrase before, it told the same story.
Right.
It had your spin on it, and I remember the only thing I kind of changed, there was something on the snare that I changed. And then there was something there was a couple things in the vocal because I wasn't familiar with a couple of the plugins, or I knew what they were. I just hadn't used them. And then that was it, man. Then it was just hit next, mix is the same goddamn thing I had done a year before.
Yes.
But with yours. So in my mind, this was the way that all handoffs were always going to work from here on out. And
how'd that work out for you?
Not exactly that way at all. And I had done some, but not quite on the level of this. And they had all gone okay, but I had never gone back to them to check it out. So that was so the point of the story is that we're like a year into this saga now. I go back, it's the same show, it's the same result, it's the same feeling, everyone's stoked, and it was killer too, because it wasn't like, it was like, oh man, good to see you, but then it's also like, we're having a blast with Pooch at the same time. So it was a good feeling.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
To have handled it that way, and then to see it succeeding that way. So anyway, I did one show. I think it was just one, maybe two, at that one festival, and then I split, and then you came back and ran it until it ran its course.
took the stone out, and then ran it for another year or something. That was almost I think the total was like 18 months or something before you decided to stop. So that's a successful story, right, guys? That's like, kind of how it should be when you're passing off to somebody to cover for you, even, let's talk about those kind of scenarios. Have you ever had someone else that showed up just to cover like a couple of shows for you, and how did that go, and what was the vibe of that situation? Can you think of any examples of that?
I've never, it's funny. I had in a few years' time, because when life calls, it can often call quite heavily.
Hard. A lot.
Yes. So I had two situations within a few years where I had to leave gigs. Other than that, I mean, I've never had, trying to think, I don't even know if I've ever had anybody cover me for like one show. Maybe, I don't, for the most part, which maybe that's why I ended up in the situation where life was calling quite as hard. It's because I never put anything in front of the gig. Now that we're talking about it, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should have missed some gigs. So short-term stuff, I really don't think I have any. I had another eventual sort of long-term replacement kind of thing. What about you? You've had people come in for, I guess I popped in, but other than that,
no. As you were talking, I was trying to remember. I know I've had people like had to cover for me on a couple of stuff, and I can't think of the specifics of how that went, to be honest. Anyway,
and I can tell you, I also, it's funny. I've been doing this for a minute. But there have been a lot of threats of me covering for people for short-term stuff, but I've really never done it. I pretty much, for the most part, have only gone into either complete shit shows, which is a good position to be in because you kind of get the opportunity to be the knight in shining armor, and So I've only done that, or I've gone into where there was simply an engineer change for maybe a less dramatic reason. Yeah. I've never inherited a show file. Oh, wow. I've never taken anyone's show file. It's just never come up. So I've always had to start from scratch.
Oh, that's interesting. See, my experience, and this is not me tooting my own horn, but I think partially why our little handoff thing went well is because I've been the cleanup guy for years. Toby Francis, whenever he's wanted to, leave a gig, I've been the guy that he's called, and literally since I don't even know 1998. When he was talking about leaving Kiss, that's kind of where we first ran into each other. And he literally, handed the keys of the car over to the kid, and took a chance on me. I mean, that's really the deal, is that, Toby, I owe Toby a lot in my career, because not only Kiss, but a lot of other bands that are huge bands, he would start them, and for whatever reason decided he didn't want to do it anymore, or he had another gig or whatever. He was that guy that used me as the kid that could come in after he had got it all set up or whatever. So I've done this. Shit, I don't know, dude. I mean, at least 10.
Which is badass.
At least 10 times. At least 10 times.
Well, I forget what's the phrase. It's like, you never want to be the man that replaces the man. Like, to come in there after someone that's having success, that's tough.
And I think that is the kind of the, what do you call it? The reason our friendship has been a 20-year friendship is because he respects that. He's like, wow, I can't believe that you held on to that after I left. It was for sure going to probably go wanky, and so I've been very lucky to be that guy, right? Like, I probably 6 or 7 of those 10 are major bands, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That he got the first call on and did, the first, 3 months of the tour, and then, said, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And, or whatever, he had lots of stuff going on, so, there were, I was always his first call. And so I'm very lucky that I was. And so, I've experienced that a bunch of times, and he does it well, just like you do it well, in the sense of, whenever I showed up, he was always like, yeah, check this out. Well, first of all, if you don't know Toby Francis, he is like the most mellow dude on this planet. Like, he'll literally, like, if the venue is on fire, Toby Francis is standing there going, wow.
Yeah.
It's on fire.
I remember talking to him after the Kidney Stone Japan gig. Yeah. And he was just like, yeah, it went well. Went really well. And I'm like, you psychopath. How?
That's right. How could it go well?
Have gone well? That would have been a terrifying experience.
He is just, when it comes to stress, I laugh, like, he does Kanye West all the time, right? So, man, Kanye just throws curveballs everywhere. Like, he was there doing that Coachella church thing, that nobody knew anything, what it was or how it was going to work, or, I just know that if I had been there and I was asked to be that guy, I would be like, what?
Right. Yeah. Right.
What is happening? Like, what's getting plugged into what? And I know I wasn't there, but I know that Toby was just like, he's like, yep. All right, so let's just turn this up and do that, and he's that guy. And I wish I had a little more of that in me, but
I hear you. I hear you.
But anyway, so I'm just pointing out to you that's been something that's been in my career. It's not so much that I've handed things over to people, but I've been like, that's been a major part of my career, has been the guy who shows up.
And see that there again, we talk about the differences. It's interesting. Now that we talk about it, I guess I really see it. You know, again, for me, it's usually coming in playing clean up, like just with a mess.
Yes.
You know, so there again, there's just a number of ways that things can work. Coming in too, there can be the placebo effect, meaning I would kind of have a leg up coming in a lot of these situations compared to yourself. Now, it's great if you're coming in and you've got the unwavering support of the person that's succeeding that you're replacing. That's great. That speaks volumes. But there's also this sort of, if you're like me, you're showing up to a place where things didn't go so great, you kind of already you've got a little bit in your favor by just your mere presence.
Totally.
You know, is depending on who we're talking about, but whoever's watching you, viewing you, you know, but so I don't know. I guess there's just different ways this can go down.
There is. So speak to, what do you do? Does it change what you do in your setup when you show up to a car wreck? Like, do you, no. So you just do what you do and you're like, okay, you're hiring me to do what I do.
Yeah. Now I'll do plenty, and usually you don't even have to ask. You know, I'll do every bit of intel, get every bit of intel, do every bit of research that I can on what exactly went wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? What were the things that went wrong? Was it, you know, and it's just, it was and loud.
the thing, let's go down this little rabbit hole that you just opened a little bit, because often the guy getting booted is not because of sound.
Oh, there's that. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like maybe the dude is, I know I got a gig, a major gig, because the guy was being mouthy at the bar.
Yeah. It can start, we'll just call that, then say that's a political thing. Right. It can often start as a political thing.
Right.
And then it turns into, and you know what else? You know, all these sonic reasons suddenly appear.
Oh, jeez.
So I've been on, I've had that. I've replaced a guy that was just a jerk. I've replaced a guy that was a jerk with what they finally copped to was a bad mix. Then I've replaced people who the engineer was loved, revered. I mean, he could do no wrong, yet he put his guy in place. And a lot of times people put someone in place, like they don't go out and find you, they find half of you.
Because they're scared. They're scared. They don't,
they're scared. They want that gig to always be theirs. And the only way that they're going to do that is by putting someone that's just good enough, but that's never going to quite be them. They also don't want to be showed up by whoever comes in. So I've done that before. I have taken on a gig where the second coming of Christ was there. He left, put his guy in place.
Yeah.
That guy faltered.
Right.
They called me saying guy is faltering. And then the engineer had so much power that he was able to still, from afar, he had even left the gig, still kind of wield some control over what was happening, make sure that guy stayed in place. And then guess what? That guy eventually failed.
Right.
And then they called me again, which was great, kind of tying into our previous discussion about salary negotiations. Because when they called me and they said, hey, we want you to come, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
But then when they said, you know what, I think we're going to stick with this guy. Here's what's happened. I didn't blow up. I didn't freak out. I said, okay, great. Call me if it doesn't work out. And then they did call me. And then the price went up just a little.
Yeah, of course it does. Come on.
So, I don't remember where we started with that. Oh yeah, you were saying political. A lot of times you're replacing someone, and particularly front of house. I mean, let's face it, man. That's about as big an ego as you can get on a lot of tours. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. But is the front of house engineer?
You know, I mean, we talk about this a lot in the sense that monitor engineers, to me, a monitor engineer's job is like infinitely harder than ours.
Oh, 1,000 times.
Sound wise, right? So their job of creating 32 stereo mixes. And then to me, the hardest part about their job is getting an artist that intimately knows their music to be happy with the sound of whatever it is that they want. It may not be record, like that may not be what they want. What they want to be able to hear is some weird Frankenstein version of it, but able to get that and make an artist happy that is way more intimately knowledgeable about his own music or her own music, is like, I don't even like, you know, I was a monitor engineer for a while, but I was in the day and age of like loud wedges, you know, not at all like what it is now, you know,
not a mix.
Yes.
Like what's going on in ears.
So they have an infinitely harder job, but what they don't have is a manager and a girlfriend,
of course,
and the recording engineer of the record, and the best friend from middle school, all with opinions about how it should sound. And so navigating all of that is, I mean, that's what makes front of house hard, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it could be those people, just like I was thinking, you know, we're talking about, you know, monitor engineers, they have to make that artist happy. They have to interpret with sometimes limited interaction what that artist's wishes are. And then they have to somehow put themselves in that artist's listening position, which could be 1,000 different places throughout the course of the show. But the way I'll tie that into what we have, think about all of those people, some of whom are going to be with you at front of house if you're lucky. Some of whom could be in any number of places of horrible coverage. Some of them could be with you, which sounds great, but maybe they're 7 feet to your left where there's a huge pocket and no low end. And they go back and tell the artist, it just didn't hit. It just didn't hit.
Totally.
You know? So there's so many factors that can play into this, you know?
It's so funny. It's funny that you say that, because I did, you'll probably be able to figure out who it is by anyway. There's the husband and the wife are both major artists, and one of them, I was working for the husband, and the wife was at every show, but sometimes there would be a comment like from her, like, you know, hey, it wasn't hitting here, or what, you know, whatever. So I started asking where she was, because I never saw her. I started saying, well, you know, where do you guys put her every night? Is she standing like in monitor world, or, you know, I mean, like, what's happening? And what I found out is that they were putting her in a VIP suite every night that was glassed.
Of course.
And all she had for sound was whatever was in that VIP suite, which was, you know, some horrible, you know, near fieldy kind of a thing. And, you know, some of them are fully enclosed, but, you know, most aren't, but it's super glassy, and, you know, they're always way the hell up in the middle of nowhere. And so, when I heard that, it made me feel better, because I was like, oh, okay, good. It's not like she's standing somewhere down on the floor and experiencing that. This is maybe something we can fix. And in the end, what we ended up doing was we would find out wherever her suite was, and we started setting up near fields in a sub and awesome. Timing them up there. And I got 0 comments after that.
Yeah. Wait, how are we doing on time? We okay?
We're good. We got, like, you know, another 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I need to start keeping a timer on this thing. So then a brief tangent then on that same thought. When you are coming in, taking over a gig, you know, I mentioned I'll do get all the intel, do all the research as to what went wrong or what went right. Yeah. Maybe that's more times than not for you. It was like, hey, what was working? You know,
totally.
But you also need to know who matters in that camp. And this can actually segue into another situation I've had where the handoff didn't go so well. But what I mean by that is very simply that. Know who matters.
That's right.
Is it an MD? Is it a production manager? Is it a girlfriend? It could be, I've had a choreographer be the most important person
100%.
That I could deal with. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you need to know who those people are. First of all, if it's in your personality type, meet them. Like, just meet them, shake their hand. If you can imagine that, shaking hands. It sounds so foreign now in COVID land. But
give them an elbow now, right?
Give them an elbow,
whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So know who they are. But I'll even do. I've done things like this. I do things like this all the time. Part of my rehearsal process, if there is a creative table, which for those of you all who don't know, this is more like in like a pop gig or something. They will literally, in the floor of an arena or of whatever the rehearsal space is, they will put out 1 or 2 or 3 6-foot tables. And at that table sits the manager, dad, the choreographer,
the show designer,
the director, the show designer. All of these people will be out there. I'll see where they put that table. I will then turn on music, walk out there and listen. I will also measure. Again, going back into system tuning things, I will measure from that spot, and I have no problem at all grabbing that fucking table and scooting it back
100%.
6 feet. And I'll do it in front of everyone, but I'll do it before they show up. Or sometimes I've even done it like as they're showing up, like, hang on guys, real quick.
Can you move?
Which is a ballsy move.
That's ballsy.
But it's like, I know the way that works. So if they sit there in a less than ideal listening environment. So, and that's right from the jump. That's right at the beginning, right as you're making your initial impression. So the point of all that is, know who matters in that.
Yeah. No, that's a great, that's great advice. Along with that, though, you should always point out too that you're talking about a group of people, those people that are sitting at that 6-foot table. Often the rest of the tour, if it's a big pop tour, there's 40 other people that are moving parts in all of this. Those other 39 are scared shitless of that 6-foot table. Like literally they are like, what, I'm not talking. No, I'm not going over there. Da, da, da. And I have always been the guy that goes over and introduces myself and says, hey, I'm Pooch. I'm the front of house guy. If you guys have any problems with any sort of sound thing, whether it's the artist having an issue or me having, you guys aren't hearing what you want to hear, just come talk to me. Just see who I am and come talk to me. And literally I do that in every situation. And those 6 people that are sitting there respect you so much for doing that. I've watched those people go, okay, because it's like almost never happened to them. Like nobody else has ever done that to them. You know what I mean? Right.
And you know what? Let me just say this real quick while you're saying it, because I think that's beautiful and that's so incredibly true. And another thing too, so many times, particularly as the gigs grow in stature, I've mentioned this on here before, where audio falls down the totem pole, because there's it's more show business than it is music, and so many times front of house guys kind of fall into this thing of like, oh, right. I'm not saying make a spectacle out of yourself, but don't make it where it's, I'm better.
Dad, don't hide. Don't be the guy.
Hide.
Yeah.
Don't hide, because when you put that energy forward, that's what's going to come back to you. And those same people, and I'm telling you, the people that are at that table or that are the sort of kind of people sometimes that we're sort of talking about, they'll smell blood.
Oh man.
And they will. And if you kind of portray that, it's just not a good look. Again, don't be boisterous. Don't be an asshole. No. This guy. But be a human being that's confident. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. I just did a speed mentoring event, which was this thing, this recording school. A friend of mine hooks us up where we do this little one-on-one WebEx thing where it's like this, but it's me with a recording student, and they get 8 minutes. It's like a round to round thing. So each of the students get 8 minutes with me. And one of the things one of the students asked is what I'm looking for in a person that's just starting out, like what it is that I would want to see in a young kid engineer who gets on a tour. Like, what do I want to see in that kid? And one of the things that I said to him that I think is really important is knowing when to ask questions and knowing when to speak is a skill. Like, being in situations with people and knowing when to introduce yourself and knowing when to ask the right questions is that's really a skill, man. Like a guy that could be the hardest worker in the world, but spends his time right next to me while I'm trying to work going, well, why are you doing that? And are you doing this because, why is that happening? Da, 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 da. I'm going to respond to that guy poorly. That dude, I want him to ask me questions. Don't get me wrong. I love it when a new person asks me questions about what I'm doing. But the guys that I like are the guys that wait until it's appropriate. Yes. So I think finding that moment is the real key part of that too. I don't just go guns blazing over to that table of 6 people. I go over there when I know there's a moment that, they're not focused on, why the choreographer is doing something stupid or, whatever.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that in there, that's a real skill, man, like figuring out when it is appropriate to talk to those people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing we should point out too, both of us are talking about being assertive, be yourself, like be forthcoming, do all these things. And I speak often on, with confidence. That doesn't mean that I don't have trepidation in a number of these. There's a lot of times where I'm approaching that dressing room, that table, that stage, that any number of things, or in my mind, I'm going, oh, fuck. You know what I mean? But the portrayal, hopefully, is calm and confident. So,
well, that's a really important thing, right? Like we need to point that out a lot because, listen, my outside almost always portrays confidence, and people look at me and say, okay, that dude's got it. But the real deal, what's happening behind the scenes is not pretty. Like literally, I'm like, like if you could see what's happening in my mind, trying to like dodge questions, and like literally the physicality of that would be a face more like this, like
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like that would literally be the face. But instead, my face is clear confidence. I've got this. They need to feel that I've got this. And be, you might be scared in the moment, but be, exude confidence and then try to, freak out later after you walk away from them.
Right. Or find out it wasn't as horrible as you thought it was going to be. You know what I mean?
That's great. I love it.
So, now as we're kind of winding down, I guess I should speak about different scenarios.
Yeah.
Where, I've had
tell us where it went horribly wrong.
Right. So I've had another situation. Where I handled things the exact same way as I handled them with you and I, or that you have handled them with someone else, or that Toby or whoever has handled. It's a common sense way to do it. I've used that, and I was doing it for the same reason. I'm trying to do right by me. I'm trying to do right by the client. I'm trying to do right by you. That will pay dividends. And had a good experience at the beginning of this. The person was very receptive, seemed very on board with what was going on. It was another situation where I wasn't failing. And I actually did notice, and same deal, the first gig that I watched, I did kind of quickly, we did a couple. The first one was pretty much like, okay, it is what it is. Like it seems to be the same. And then the next one or two, I started noticing, I was like, wow, things are changing rapidly.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm gone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's a tough one when you're at a certain point, I'm just like, okay, man,
I know. Like, so what do you say? Did you have a moment? I know that you probably didn't say anything, but did you have a moment where you were like, man, I should tell this guy that he's blowing it? Like, don't do that.
This kind of goes back to something we spoke about earlier when you're like, how do you teach someone to care? In another video we did, and I think my response was somewhere along the lines of, I don't think you can.
Right.
And I think if I recall, my thinking in the moment was, this is a conscious decision on his or her part to make these moves this quickly.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to talk him out of that kind of thinking. I mean, and so forget mixing, just on a human level, I think I just went, no, that's what this guy's going to do. So shit,
yikes. Yeah, exactly. Like, shit.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then you can see where this story's going, and it did just say it didn't work out.
Yeah, didn't go well.
The person didn't pay attention to who mattered.
Right,
he completely changed.
Speak to that a little bit, because I've had that situation too, where someone I watched, like, not even, for instance, okay, so how many times I've done a bunch of pop gigs where there is a dude that is maybe not the recording engineer of the record or the producer, but he had something to do with the record. And so all of a sudden he is like the artist's ears.
Right. And,
like, you wouldn't think that guy was going to be the guy. Like, you wouldn't think, you were like, I don't know if that guy's, how much clout he has. But then you find out, like, wow, man, that dude's got, he's got the artist's ear. And so then if that's true, then I'm like, okay, let's listen to this guy and try to, go through whatever it takes to get through that. But I have never ignored that. So that's a foreign thing. So that's what happened in your situation?
Yeah. And even as I hear you describe that, I mean, I think it's just because I've been in this situation so many times with like new camps and big, dramatic, pressure-filled camps where I'm like, how do you not know that person
totally
mattered? And I keep saying that. But
no, it's true.
You can tell. So, yeah, in this situation, there weren't a lot of cooks in the kitchen. If anything, this person walked into like a pretty streamlined. What's fucked is when you walk in and there's like 12 people that seem to matter. Yeah. And you're like, oh God, there weren't many. And the person didn't listen to what was being asked of them from that person or was being conveyed to them. But they also...
And you told them, right? You told them who was important. You're like, dude, that guy is important. Yeah.
Plain as day.
I know.
And then in turn changed a mix prematurely. Again, like you said, sit with it for a month or however long,
at least
it takes.
Yes.
And then do what you think it should do. But this particular mix was more or less produced by the artist.
Right.
So they knew the mix. Like that mix, you talk about the monitor guy interpreting the artist. This mix is me interpreting the art. Like, so it's like, don't fuck with his mix. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Bottom line, it didn't go very well.
Right.
And I'll stop the story there. But it was the exact opposite. And I called Pooch several times as it was going down in flames to say, man, you spoiled me. You spoiled me.
Oh, so, that's nice. So speak to that. I know that you went back to that gig.
Yeah.
How did that go? Like when you show back up and they were like, yeah, thanks a lot for that guy. Like, is that what happened or what?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Yeah. There was some of that for sure. It was like,
was it hazing? It was just hazing though, right?
I'll get it every now and again, but you know what? I have to, because like, I thought it was going to work.
Right.
I truly with all my heart thought it was going to work.
Right.
And it didn't. So as much as it's nice to be, I mentioned the guys that have like their whoever fill in for them, so it's never as good as them. That wasn't my intention.
No.
But it does feel good to kind of be, hey, look, it's not working out. We love what you did. It didn't work, blah, 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 blah. Like that feels good, but it doesn't feel good to also be the architect of some failed experiment that probably put a lot of people under some undue stress.
Yeah, for sure.
But in going back, there was a lot of, goddamn, we're glad you're back, coupled with what the fuck was that?
What the fuck was that? Yeah, exactly.
What just happened?
Yeah. I think, to kind of sum all this up, I don't, it's foreign for me to be that guy that you just described, where you replace yourself with somebody that's perceived to be half, the engineer that you are, because you want everyone to think how bad ass you are. And to me, that's fear. Like literally, if I'm going to replace myself, I would want to replace myself with someone that I perceived as being better than me, because that camp, in the future, you're going to see him again. Maybe not that artist. You're going to see the manager. You're going to see the production manager. You're going to see all those things. If you do that, if you replace yourself with someone that's even better than you and it goes really well, I'm telling you, it'll pay off down the road 100-fold.
And you know what? This is a good way to kind of sort of wrap this up too. I saw the rather famous and notoriously can be intimidating manager of the artist we started this story with. I saw him, it's been 4 years now. I saw him several months ago.
Right.
At an event backstage, and was just like, let's see what happens. Walked up to him and it was like, hey man, how's it going? Blah, blah. Like everything was good. He could have hated me. He absolutely, which thank you, Pooch. But he could have absolutely, he could have been like, you motherfucker, you left me out.
Yeah, you left me. But he didn't have that experience, right? Like everything went okay.
Yes.
And so that power manager is going to call you again for other gigs.
That's the point. So not only did that little thing end well and we put a little box on it and moved it off the site, that very well, when my name comes across his whatever phone, we're honest, later, it'll be met with a favorable response.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That speaks to just handle your business the right way.
Yeah. Have confidence, man. Don't live in fear that if someone's going to steal your job. Be good at what you do. I honestly, I tell kids this all the time when I, did that event, is I truly believe if you do good work, the work will come to you. So do good work and have good human interactions with people, and you'll go far in this business. It's the guys that are dicks, and it's the guys that are scared about losing jobs that disappear, right? Like we don't see those guys again,
It's true.
So anyway,
and you see those people you see the guys with the hot hand for 5 years that come through and then they're gone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you want longevity, be that guy that everyone wants to be around, and then have the skills to back it up. That's the deal. Yeah. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.